afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the NFL Pre-Lock Show here on Rotogrinders. We're talking the first slate of the NFL playoffs for 2022. So the newly revamped wildcard round schedule gives us 2 games today on Saturday, and then 3 on Sunday and 1 on Monday. So I am Justin Van Zuden, aka STL Cardinals 84. I've got 2 co-hosts beside me. We've got Christy Metzger on one side, aka Creighton. Christy, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing good. I know it's been a while since I've connected with you, probably since baseball. So excited to see that I was doing the show with you and Dan today.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've been on with both of you. So it's good to get the band back together. Maybe we can help create some winning lineups. So we've got Mr. Tuttle, Dan on the other side. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. I was talking to you a little bit pre-show about me not being exactly sure what I'm going to be doing today still. It's kind of a weird slate. It's a little tricky to get different without getting stupid, and those slates are always tough to figure out.
Yeah, the stupid sometimes win, so you never know. On the second and third string tight ends have won many showdown slates so far this year. So we're going to focus this show on the 2 games that are taking place this afternoon, unless we get a little bit of extra time before the slate locks. But we want to make sure we take questions. We want to make sure we have given you all the information that you need. But do want to pass along a few things before we get going. If you are building some lineups for the full weekend slate, 2 bits of news have broken in about the last hour that might impact you. The first one is that Juju Smith-Schuster has been activated by the Steelers, and he is expected to play tomorrow night. Still don't know in what capacity or what role he's going to be out there, but maybe a little bit of a hit to Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson there if Juju is going to get any significant amount of snaps. We don't know exactly what that's going to be, but he has been activated. And then the bombshell that broke just about 10 minutes ago is that Leonard Fournette has been ruled out for tomorrow's game against the Eagles. So you're probably going to see Keyshawn Vaughn, Le'Veon Bell. They have activated Gio Bernard, so he's going to be in the lineup, or most likely the 3rd string running back on Sunday. So make sure you get Leonard Fournette out of those lineups that you have built for the full weekend slates, because he was trending towards being perhaps one of the most popular players on the slate. So for now, we'll just talk about the 2-game Saturday slate. Big GPPs out there, lots of money to be won. We've got the Vegas Raiders and Cincinnati coming up at 4:30 Eastern time, 48.5 the total in that game. And then we've got the Patriots and Bills in freezing weather in Buffalo with a total of 43. You might remember that those 2 teams played about 2 months ago in a Monday night game that had like 50-mile-an-hour wind gusts, and Mac Jones threw the ball 3 times in that game, and the Patriots still won. So just in general, what do we make of these two games? Which teams are we looking to target the most? And then we'll dig into the players here. But Tuttle, who you liking in these games this afternoon?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's pretty clear the first game is the one that seems most attractive, just in terms of points scored. To complicate things, though, like the Bills still have a pretty decent team total, and it's holding pretty steady too. So I think kind of, if I were to rank the teams, it's probably in the order of their implied totals, not to be straight line here, but it probably is. You go Bengals, then Bills, then Raiders, and then somewhere down the line, the Patriots. So I think that's kind of the order of priority. It's just figuring out how to mix it all together, which makes it a little bit more interesting, I think.
Yeah, I think the majority of builds are going to look that way too, especially if you take the weather into account in Buffalo and the fact that New England's probably going to try to take a similar approach that they did the first time these teams met. So, Christy, what do you think about these games here this afternoon?
Yeah, I'm kind of breaking it down kind of the way, Tuttle kind of talked about it. I have, a lot of strong interest in the Cincinnati game and would probably rank them at the top. But, like you said, Buffalo's right there, not too far behind, certainly have a lot of interest in them as well. Probably the least interest in the Patriots, although I expect a lot of the running game there. And, so I think there are a couple of interesting pieces from that team. But, yeah, I think as we kind of talk through the slate, you're going to find I have a lot of interest in that first game and probably pretty heavy on that. I think a lot of people will be, but I think there are a couple ways to get a little bit different. And we can kind of talk about that as we go through the positions.
Sounds like a plan. A couple of other housekeeping notes before we get rolling here. If you are watching us live on YouTube and you want to know where to catch us to ask your questions, you can join the free Rotogrinders Discord at rotogrinders.com/Discord. And we will be in the live stream chat channel. So that is a free channel. You can get in there without premium access as long as you're a Rotogrinders member. That's all you need to be. And you can ask your questions there in the live stream chat on Rotogrinders. Also, check out BetMGM. Great time of year to get rolling on BetMGM with the NFL playoffs and the Super Bowl, of course, coming up in a month or so. You can use the bonus code GRINDERSBET on BetMGM and bet $10 to get $200 instantly if the team you bet on scores a touchdown. And I believe I read earlier today that BetMGM is getting ready to launch already in New York, where sports betting has just gotten rolling over the last week. We've got all the information in the description of this video or on the Rotogrinders homepage if you need some sign up links to the different sports books. If you are in New York, obviously a huge state that's probably going to put up a huge sports betting handle. They've already got almost as many sports books as we have here in Illinois, and they've been around for a week, and Illinois has been live for like 2 years. So New York, obviously a huge addition to the sports betting market, and I believe you'll be able to check out BetMGM there pretty soon as well. So all right, let's start digging into the positions here. I've got DraftKings up on the screen share. We can touch on FanDuel as well. The strategy for FanDuel often a little bit different because the chalky plays, the chalky spend up plays tend to be a little more chalky, and on FanDuel with the salary cap not being quite as restrictive. But DraftKings, it makes it a little bit tighter, a little bit tougher to build lineups. And if we just go by positions here, obviously we've got 4 quarterbacks on the slate today, and Mac Jones is the least appealing from a projection standpoint and a game standpoint with the weather there in Buffalo. So seems pretty much the consensus that Mac Jones is the lowest owned quarterback today. Christy, who are you prioritizing on most of your builds at quarterback?
Yeah, I actually find myself prioritizing Burrow in quite a few of my lineups today. He just comes into this matchup just, very, very hot. He's putting up a ton of yards, and he has so many weapons at his disposal. I mean, we saw what Jamar Chase has been doing, but T. Higgins is right there behind him. And then their running game is so good, and with Joe Mixon, and he catches some passes too. So I just, it's hard for me to get away from him. And for me, he's my favorite quarterback play on the slate. I do like Josh Allen though too. He has such good rushing upside. He can easily rush for a couple of touchdowns in there too. So those are probably the 2 that I'm looking at the most. And I probably have definitely the most exposure to Burrow. Carr just lacks a little bit of the upside for tournaments. His price is certainly right, and there's pieces of that game that I like, but for me, it's a lot of Burrow today.
Yeah, the interesting thing about Allen is that he's averaging, you look at his last 5 games, he's averaging like 65 rushing yards a game, something like that. I just tried to eyeball that real quick, but 63, 81, 64, 24, and 109 rushing yards his last 5 games. You might see them be a little bit more conservative with the playbook in the weather today, and perhaps a few more designed runs for Allen to switch up the plays a little bit. Who knows? But I think Allen and Burrow pretty clearly the top 2. With the weather, the ownership has kind of evened out. Like we've got Allen at 38% and Burrow at 36%. I'll probably still end up with a decent amount of Allen on DraftKings. On FanDuel, because you've got the salary, Allen's still going to be a little more chalky over there. So probably lean towards Burrow a little more on FanDuel, Allen a little more on DraftKings, maybe Carr in some lineups where I'm rolling Joe Mixon or thinking that the Raiders might be playing from behind. I really can't make much of a case for Mac Jones, even at like 6, 7, 8% ownership. Tuttle, you rolling any Mac Jones, or is he an X out for you?
He's an X out for me. I mean, you could definitely spin it and try to paint a picture where New England gets behind early. They're not able to, run the ball, and like maybe he gets you 20 points and that's enough on this slate. Because I do think we could potentially see scoring fairly condensed at the quarterback position. I'm not pulling the trigger on Mac Jones, but I guess I kind of understand the argument of going a little bit cheaper. It's just Derek Carr seems like the significantly better option if you're doing that. So I think Carr will get any of that low priced ownership. I've been trying to build some Carr teams on DraftKings. The issue here, and again, his salary matters much more. His salary relief matters much more on DraftKings than FanDuel. It can get you a lot more on DK than FanDuel. The problem here, though, is like Carr. I mean, he started out the season good, throwing the ball a lot, throwing for a lot of yards, and then they kind of changed coaching, kind of changed offensive philosophy, and it's been a lot of limiting what he does and limiting how he influences the game, which is probably the right call. And then he also gets taken out for certain Marcus Mariota packages on goal line situations, on short yard situations. I mean, similar to Mac Jones, I really do think Derek Carr's upside is pretty capped in this spot too, even though I do prefer him over Mac Jones. But again, yeah, I think when you're talking the lower tier quarterbacks, it's, again, if you're taking one, you're just hoping the quarterback scoring's condensed because they clearly don't have the upside of the other two guys.
Yeah, D-Train in the chat, he wants to go really contrarian and bank on an early injury in that cold weather in Buffalo. So he's wanting to roll some Mitch Trubisky out there today. I don't think I'll be doing that. Maybe you can do that on a couple showdown lineups if you're just playing the night game and you want to bank on an injury to Josh Allen. But I know it's one. I think it's won like 2 showdown slates this year, which is wild. I know the one Josh Johnson,
you have to hit so many outs to get it to even have a chance.
Yep.
But my take on that, if you're playing the injury card, just do it with, like, Marcus Mariota is going to get snaps, so you would just do it Mariota over Trubisky.
Yeah, Obi sneaks a touchdown or something out of there. Yeah, I know it happened with Josh Johnson the one week, and then the week that Russell Wilson got hurt. Gino was the guy. So it happened twice, but you still got to build the winning lineup around it, and you need you're banking on Josh Allen to get hurt in like the first quarter or something. It's tough to just make that case when you're live hosting a show on air. Like if you making a lineup in the background and you want to do it, realizing, hey, I'm probably going to be out this $5 or whatever, go ahead and do it. But hard to endorse that on the air anyway. All right. Any other quarterback takes? Obviously, we've only got 4. I think we pretty well covered them. Chris, do you got anything else? Quarterback?
No, I don't. I might just noticed, we talked a little bit about Burrow. He's averaging 27 fantasy points per game over the last 5 weeks. We talked about him coming in hot. Just thought I'd point that out. But yeah, I think we kind of covered it for me. Again, looking at the guys at the top, and then on DraftKings, I do have a little bit of interest in Carr too.
Yeah, Burrow and that receiver core, pretty special group they've got there. That's part of what makes, as we go to running back, the running back options this weekend are really strange. And we've gotten a little more clarity on the Sunday slate because of, Edwards-Hilaire's been ruled out and now Fournette's been ruled out. So if you're playing the full weekend slate, you're going to see most of the ownership go towards those running backs on Sunday. But today you got to try to find at least 2, maybe 3 running backs if you're playing in one in your flex on a 2-game slate. And so everybody's playing Mixon, who seems to disappoint every time he's chalk. And everybody's playing Singletary, who has pretty much disappointed for like 3 or 4 years every time he's chalk. And then, you got Josh Jacobs, whose role sometimes decreases if they fall behind in games. And then you got the 2 New England running backs. So to me, this is a spot where the chalk could very easily bust here. Like Singletary has disappeared so many times throughout his career that, yeah, he got more of a role late in the regular season, but if he's got one bad game or a fumble or they fall behind, it's not a sure thing with any of these running backs. And it just makes it really interesting when you consider 75% ownership on Joe Mixon and you try to think of what could go wrong. Well, there's lots of things that could go wrong. So Tuttle, I'll throw this to you first. Have you pulled any rabbits out with some no-brainer running back plays here?
It's kind of similar. I mean, it's a little bit better than the quarterback position, but it's pretty hard to make arguments for running backs that aren't the chalk. I mean, the Patriots running backs are pretty easy to make a case for. You expect them to run the ball as much as they can. So there's certainly fine plays or fine tournament pivots. But after that, it gets ugly real quick. You could throw another Patriots running back, hope they fall or get behind early and they have to throw the ball more. Then you'd be looking at a Brandon Bolden game potentially. You could see something like that happen. Of the chalk running backs, I want, like, my old self would say Singletary has the least safe role, but I kind of think it's Josh Jacobs. We haven't seen it a whole lot this year, and there was a little stretch where he was actually catching the ball a decent amount, but Jalen Richard was out for an extended period of time. He's kind of missed games here and there. Richard was back healthy, back active, playing passing downs last week, or at least third downs. So I do think Jacobs could potentially find himself where, the Raiders do get down early. And I wouldn't expect him to lose snaps in the first half, but maybe at fourth quarter, it's all comeback mode. And then we could be looking at like a Jalen Richard game or something like that. Again, even in that scenario, it's hard to project Jalen Richard doing enough to really end up in optimal lineups. I would be more of a case to potentially not use as much Josh Jacobs more than anything. But it's hard to really find a path for any of these backup running backs to get a big enough workload to even really hit double digit fantasy points.
Yeah, that's the problem. It's not like you've got, if you want to fade the chalk, it's not like you have this amazing pivot to go to. And that's kind of where you get stuck. So it all becomes, who do you trust the least out of, say, Mixon, Singletary, and Jacobs, to where you want to leave one of them out for sure. And then, maybe your pivot is to a New England running back, which I do like. I think you look at the first meeting between these two teams, as I mentioned, it was 50-mile-an-hour winds, but New England only threw the ball 3 times. Harris had like 11 carries in that game, and I think he got injured. I can't remember. But he broke a long touchdown run in the first half, and then he was banged up, and then Stevenson got 24 carries. So like the Patriots could very easily run the ball 40 times, and it's, more relevant to showdown. Like I think you could play Harris and Stevenson together. You probably don't want to do that on the 2-game slate, but the Patriots could very easily run the ball 40 times here and give, Harris and Stevenson a combined 30, 35 carries if they're able to, keep it tight throughout or maybe play with a lead. To where, okay, maybe you take one of the chalk guys and then you play Harris with them. So you're playing like Mixon and Harris, and that way you're fading Singletary and Jacobs. Just a thought. That's a way to do it in tournaments, like in cash games. By all means, play the chalk guys and play for the block. But Christy, is there a guy you think is a can't miss out of this group?
Yeah, I like Mixon, obviously the best. I mean, I feel the best about him at the top, but I do like Damian Harris quite a bit. And I think we have him 4th for ownership on DraftKings at, 29%. I kind of saw a stat too, he scored 14 touchdowns and averaged 5 yards per catch over the last 11 games. And I was looking back, at some of his logs, and yeah, I mean, he's put up a ton of points in the last 2 games against Buffalo. I think the day after Christmas, he had 3 touchdowns. So I agree. I think there's going to be a heavy dose of a running game for New England. And I just think Harris is, the best bet to get it done. You mentioned Bolden and even Stevenson. You never know with New England too. You can use some of those as, kind of large field GPP plays, but I definitely like Harris. Singletary, he's been very hard to trust throughout the course of the year, tends to disappear. But over the last 4 or 5 weeks, he's been certainly steady. Out of the group of the top 4, which we have, Mixon, Singletary, Jacobs, and Harris, Jacobs is the one that I probably would be more willing to fade, and I'm probably more over the field on Harris instead of Jacobs. So I think Damian Harris makes a really, really solid play today.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite tournament guys, especially if the Patriots are able to play with the lead. Been burned by Devin Singletary far too many times in my daily fantasy career to ever want to play him at 60% ownership. Right. That's probably a little biased, but it's just it's tough to play some of these guys as mega chalk. So almost a guarantee that one of these guys doesn't get there today and bust, but figuring out who it's going to be and then figuring out who the pivot away is what's difficult. So it's not like you can play with confidence. Oh, I'm going to play P. Ryan or I'm going to play Zach Moss. It's kind of just landmines at running back. If you're playing the full week slate, you can probably get away with taking most of your running backs tomorrow, or maybe just playing one of those guys from today. So, all right, let's go ahead and move to wide receiver. This is the spot that I think is really interesting because we do have some solid plays. You've got the Bengals guys who have been tearing it up lately. You've got Diggs for Buffalo. You've got Renfro for the Raiders, who's picked it up in the second half. And then you've got, of course, some secondary guys, some cheaper guys like Jacoby Myers and Cole Beasley, and even Gabriel Davis is getting some steam. So, Christy, I'll move wide receiver to you first. Who's the first one or two guys that you're looking at in your lineups?
Yeah, so for me, and I know Higgins, because of his price point, both on DraftKings and FanDuel, he just makes a lot of sense. But for me, and this is where I hope to get a little bit different, but I have a lot of Jamar Chase in my lineups. I mean, he kind of reminds me a lot of Tyreek Hill. The upside is there. We saw him just, practically break the slate not too long ago, putting up 50 points. He does have a tough matchup, but if there's anybody that can get it done and really change the slate in a hurry, it's Chase. So I like getting a little bit different there. I'll certainly still have exposure to Higgins, but also like throwing Boyd in the mix too. Like you said, they have a talented trio of receivers. And so I like putting some Boyd in there. So I'm probably more overweight Boyd and Chase. And then we mentioned, Renfro. I think he's a great play too. I think, Zay Jones, just based on his price, especially on DraftKings at just 4K, I like getting a lot of exposure to him. And if you're playing cash games, I think he's, just a good core piece there. So I certainly have exposure there. I mentioned I have probably most of my exposure in this first game here. So for me, I just think Chase, I could certainly break the slate, and I like getting different there today.
Yeah, Chase is a star. He's going to be one of the top receivers in this league. And you look at the games he's put together, the upside games he's put together. He has been somewhat inconsistent at times, but if there's one wide receiver that's going to break the slate just from today's games, Chase is probably going to be that guy. So he's definitely a great play in any format. Big time upside there. And with the weather in Buffalo, I think at this point, I like Chase over Diggs if you're looking for one of the guys at the top. So, Tuttle, where are you starting your wide receiver search here this slate?
Yeah, I agree with most of what Christy said. And also agree, like, just not playing T. Higgins is probably a decent enough way to start differentiating your lineup. His price point on both sides really does just fit so many builds, which is why he's projecting for the ownership that he is. He's a good play in his own right, but then also you mix in the price point, and that's really what's driving the ownership up. Honestly, we've seen flops from both Higgins and Chase at times this season. Like they do both have single digit floors. So I think you can certainly make a case for fading either one of them. But Higgins would be the guy for me just because of the price point argument. I think we mentioned we quickly mentioned Diggs. I know there's some reports going around, and it's like it's no surprise, so it's kind of funny. But reports going around that they're going to pay extra attention to Stephon Diggs. I mean,
Patriots take away the best player, right? That's
right.
That's the old stigma for every year.
Like why are they not going to do that? So I think there is an argument. I do like Chase over Diggs, but then I also think that you can look at like a Cole Beasley. The problem then beyond Cole Beasley is figuring out how they're going to rotate their receivers, which makes the kind of remaining Buffalo receiving threats hard to predict, but also probably what makes them decent tournament options. I mentioned before the show to you, Justin, like Emmanuel Sanders, terrible, like hate clicking that name. But if he returns to the wide receiver 3 role into pretty much a full capacity, would it be all that surprising to see him get double-digit points and that be enough to end up in optimal lineups? No, not really. Like one touchdown, a few catches is going to get him there. So I think Emmanuel Sanders is a really gross play that I think you can justify. Gabriel Davis is the little more exciting of an option, and he actually has the better resume. But because of that, he will see quite a bit more ownership than Emmanuel Sanders. I think we probably have him projected for about 5 times the ownership of Manny Sanders.
He had 14 targets last week. Those are the emptiest 14 targets that you'll see outside of Bryan Edwards.
Yeah, shout out Brian Edwards. I did not realize that either. 3 receptions on 14 targets. That's brutal. Yeah, I mean, perhaps that's the case to get Manny Sanders back in there, right? Although Davis has looked pretty decent in his time without Manny Sanders. But yeah, I think there's some different ways to go. The other thing to figure out is like Zay Jones is going to be chalk on DraftKings. We mentioned not liking Devin Singletary chalk throughout our DFS careers. Like Zay Jones, are you kidding me? How did this guy suddenly become chalk? And it is because once you start looking, there's just not very many alternatives out there. You have to kind of go down to like the aforementioned Brian Edwards, who's 3,300. But at least he's on the field. At least he gets snaps. You're looking at like Nelson Aguilar, kind of same story. He's on the field. He's going to see snaps. That's about the case you can make for him. I think people might play Deshaun Jackson, and I'm going to bite my words here, but like he played 8 snaps last week.
Yeah,
in a playoff game.
16 the week before.
Yeah, so like maybe he catches a long touchdown and you get really, really lucky. But that's what's gonna it's gonna have to be really, really lucky. 8 snaps and they ran 80 offensive plays. That's not good.
Brian Edwards played 56 snaps and he played 46 snaps the week before, and the guy does nothing. Like,
right.
What does Brian
Edwards does nothing, but like at least I'll still side with Edwards over Deshaun Jackson, even though it's not fun. But yeah, give me the guy that's on the field. He's a big body. Maybe he can get a touchdown. But with Deshaun Jackson, you're really just throwing up a prayer.
Yeah, that's the wide receiver 3 or the flex plays on this slate are probably going to be difference makers. So I know it feels gross talking about some of these guys, but that could be what differentiates the GPP winner from min caching. So Christy, I know you talked about Tyler Boyd. Is there anybody else that you like a little bit as far as the value train goes? A Cole Beasley, a Myers, any of these Buffalo guys, a Zay Jones or a Brian Edwards? Who's maybe another value name that you're okay putting into some of your lineups?
Yeah, a couple of guys that I'm targeting. I don't mind going to Gabe Davis. I think he's a decent value play. It is a little bit harder finding some of those Buffalo guys and where the targets are going to go. And then Beasley, he always seems to, get some good targets. It's playoffs now. I think he's a real decent value play, and I've certainly found him in some builds. And then, Jacoby Myers, I think on that side too, we have him at, around 26% or so. He's priced at $5K. Certainly don't mind him, but yeah, I may be looking for a couple of guys on the Buffalo side there for value to get away from some of that Zay Jones chalk that we talked about.
All right, we've got about 14 minutes here until lock, so we'll look for the questions again in the live stream chat. Free Rotogrinders Discord, rotogrinders.com/Discord in the live stream chat if you guys are looking for it. A good point from Mark Flores that with the Raiders playing a lot of 2 high safeties, you could see a lot of 6-8 yard runs from Joe Mixon. So he's going to be popular, but Mixon does seem like the safest of that high end running back trio on this slate. So Prodigy has a question for FanDuel single entry tournament. So we only got one lineup: Zay Jones or Gabe Davis. Tuttle, I'll throw that one to you. Which one of those guys you like more?
I think it's Zay Jones. I hate saying it, but at least his ownership will be a little bit depressed on FanDuel. But yeah, I think it's Zay Jones.
All right. Again, the Saturday only slate locks in 13 minutes, but if you're playing the full weekend slate, Leonard Fournette has been ruled out tomorrow, so make sure you navigate around that in your lineups. Almost every site has late swap for NFL, but if you want to play a running back maybe from this first game instead of Fournette, make sure you get those swaps in. The other interesting angle on this slate, like tomorrow, Sunday, we've got Gronk, we've got Kelsey, you've got Kittle, you've got Dalton Schultz, you've got Freiermuth, who's like every team on tomorrow's slate. Dallas Goedert has been like one of the better value tight ends. Literally all 6 teams tomorrow have really strong tight end options. Today's slate, we have Darren Waller and a bunch of hit or miss guys. And the problem is, like a lot of these slates this year, it's been the random tight end touchdown that has won the slate. So if it's not Waller, is it Uzoma? Is it Hunter Henry? We've seen Dawson Knox catch some touchdowns on some showdown slates. So Christy, are you just locking in Waller, or are you looking to maybe sneak a touchdown from somebody else at tight end?
Yeah, I certainly have a lot of Waller exposure, that's for sure. But Dawson Knox to me is very interesting. And, here he is at 11% ownership. What I like about him is he gets a lot of red zone targets. And so he's, certainly in the mix, and it wouldn't surprise me to see him score a touchdown or two. So I like getting contrarian with him. Certainly if you're looking to save a little bit of money, I certainly don't mind CJ Uzuma. He's going to carry a little bit of ownership. I think we have him up there for second overall. But to me, I think just the tournament play is getting Knox in there, and especially on your Josh Allen builds, and kind of fading Waller. The thing that makes Waller a little bit of a tougher fade too is he came right back into the mix last week and got just a ton of targets. I think he ran routes on 41 out of 45 of their pass plays. So it is a tougher fade. So I certainly am overexposed there, but I think to get different, take a shot on Knox. I think he's the pivot there.
I would agree. I think Knox is the guy that I have the most exposure to outside of Waller as well. So, Tuttle, any other tight ends for you outside of Waller?
No, I mean when we knew Waller was going to be in the playoffs, I was like hoping he was going to be on the slate, like you mentioned, tomorrow, where there's actually other options, because he did surprisingly come back and just get right back into the full workload. Again, only caught 2 of his 9 targets. So I was hoping people would just be like, oh, he was trash in his return, and kind of overlook him, but that's not happening at all. I guess my only potential take here is that you could make the argument that Uzoma is the best play under 4K. I think you could make that argument. And so if you make that argument and you want to flex Waller or Uzoma, then you're finally starting to look
double
at
tight end build.
Yeah, I mean, and then you're finally starting to look at some unique builds that way. Because again, we talked about it in the wide receiver position. We're looking at like Nelson Aguilar, Brian Edwards type of stuff under there. So it's ugly, but it's a potential way to get a little bit different.
Yeah, no. And if you're building some lineups where you're fading Higgins or, Boyd or some of those Cincinnati wide receivers, then, hope you can get a touchdown and it doesn't go to one of those chalky guys, or if you don't have Mixon, something like that. So it's just the nature of the tight ends on this slate. So look at the ownership on, so we've got Waller at 70% on FanDuel, because he's only $400 more than Hunter Henry. So the ownership, like on FanDuel, Waller's 6,300, Knox is 6K. And on DraftKings, Henry's 4,500, who's almost 3,500. So you're getting a little bit more of a discount, but FanDuel, Waller will be even more chalky, and maybe an interesting tournament fade or a guy to go underweight on. Always a little bit more difficult to make the contrarian builds on FanDuel. All right, let's talk about defense, and then maybe we can spend a few minutes talking about the full weekend slate and the Sunday games, just to get us up through lock here, unless we've got questions, which be more than happy to take in the Rotogrinders Discord, rotogrinders.com/Discord. And also don't hesitate to give BetMGM a try. If sports betting is legal in your state, use promo code Grinders and you get $200 for free if you bet $10 and your team scores a touchdown on BetMGM. So check them out. All right, defense, hot takes on defense. And we've got the Patriots as the lowest owned defense. And look, if you want to play some Damian Harris and you think the Patriots can control that game and it's cold, I mean, I wouldn't put it past them to score a defensive touchdown. It's not like this is a slouch of a team defensively. So defense, very variant. And if the Patriots are going to be that low owned, I like the Patriots in GPPs today. So Tuttle, you got a hot take on defense?
No, no super hot takes. That's okay. I do think the Raiders defense is perfectly fine. They can generate pass rush. Again, if you do not play Bills defense, you're basically just hoping scoring is condensed. All the defenses get under 10 points, and then it's more just a lineup construction thing. And I think that's a completely fine approach to take today.
Christy, you got any takes on defense?
I was going to say the same thing you did. I have a lot of exposure to Patriots defense, and they I mean, they can put up points. They can put up a defensive touchdown pretty quickly. So I actually have them in my main lineups. I think it's one of those weeks though, where, kind of what fits into your, don't prioritize the defense. I think there's a lot of those defenses that could certainly put up points. I don't think it's, totally necessary to spend up on the Bills, but yeah, I'm kind of with you. I have the most exposure to the Patriots.
All right, we've got about 7 minutes left here. And what I did on the screen share, I just brought up the full week, Saturday through Monday slate. Obviously, we've talked about everybody we like today, but just for those that are last minute building some lineups, we can rapid fire some additional thoughts on guys that we like on the Sunday or the Monday games. At quarterback, you can add in the likes of Prescott, Mahomes, Matthew Stafford, maybe, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, if you're looking to get that rushing upside. I'll just rapid fire these to you. One or two more names that you like at quarterback for the full week slate. Christy, who you like?
Yeah, on the full slate, I think Mahomes is going to be one of those guys too that doesn't get prioritized as much because there are some good plays, especially earlier on in the week. So I think he's a good leverage play, especially with the Chiefs being big favorites. I also like Dak Prescott too. Great price for him. He's not running a lot, but he has a lot of upside and he still has a lot of weapons at his disposal. And then I also don't mind Matthew Stafford too. Cooper Kupp will be very popular. Stafford has not played well lately, but I think he's a pretty safe option too. But Mahomes is probably the one I'm most interested in at a little bit lower ownership.
Tuttle, who you liking at QB for the full weekend?
Yeah, more touching a point that might go overlooked. Kyler Murray's not been good, but the Rams are without two of their starting safeties now. So potentially that improves the passing game enough to where they concentrate on it a little bit more. We know the upside's there for him as well. And I like the other side of that game too. I like Stafford. So both quarterbacks in that game, I think, is a pretty good game to target for tournaments.
All right, let's move to running back. Tuttle, I'll stick with you. Now that we've got, and our ownership projections haven't fully updated yet, obviously, for the Fournette news, but we've got Edwards-Helaire out for the Chiefs. We've got Fournette out for the Bucks. So do you like Darrell Williams, Keyshawn Vaughn? Who are you going to prioritize there with the recent news we've got at running back?
Yeah, I think Darrell Williams for sure. If you're looking to get a little bit different, like James Conner was finally back at practice today, but still limited, still technically a game time decision. Edmonds is going to see a role regardless. But maybe if you want to set up some swaps for that last game because Edmonds isn't going to go very high owned and he could instantly become one of the better value plays on the game or of the slate. But it's the Monday game. So people aren't going to take that chance, but maybe set up, 2v2 swaps with Christian Kirk and some other guys in there because Edmonds could become, again, instantly one of the better plays on the slate.
Yeah, good point there. I like that idea. And with it being the Monday game, it is tough to bank on here on Saturday afternoon. So, Christy, your thoughts on the full week running back?
Yeah, I do like Darrell Williams, of course, now that we know Helaire is out, like you said. Another guy that I think is a little bit sneaky too is Sony Michel. I know Cam Akers is back, but Michel should still get most of the work in that game, and he might go a little overlooked. And then I'd also throw, even Eli Mitchell in there. Should get a ton of work. Hopefully San Francisco can keep that game close. But, I think he's an interesting play, and he'll be a lot lower owned than some of the guys we mentioned.
Yeah, I like those thoughts. Tough for me to get on the Dallas guys. I know Pollard's probably going to have some ownership on FanDuel because he's pretty cheap over there, but just tough to trust their running game at this point. So wide receiver, obviously Kupp and CeeDee Lamb are going to be prime targets. Tyreek Hill, little risky for me. You just don't know how healthy he is after that heel injury last week. So I don't know if I want to trust Tyreek Hill, over a guy like Jamar Chase, who you could just play today, or even Debo Samuel, hybrid quarterback, running back, wide receiver, can do everything nowadays. Or Mike Evans. I don't know. Hill is the one that worries me the most. All these guys are great. And since there's plenty of pivots, I think I'm going to shy away a little bit from Tyreek Hill. So, Christy, you got a favorite wide receiver player too?
Yeah, I think Cooper Kupp is going to carry some ownership. Tyreek, you mentioned, I'm certainly concerned with him too. The one positive about him is his price has come down, so it makes him a little bit easier to take a shot on him, but certainly concerned about his heel. I do like Deebo Samuel, and I got to imagine he's going to carry a lot lower ownership than Cooper and some of those guys. And like you said, he does so many things. He can throw, he can catch, and does some rushing attempts too. So I think he's a great play. It's hard, like, in those Dak Prescott lineups on knowing what to do. So, throwing a guy like CeeDee Lamb or Amari Cooper, certainly don't mind getting exposure to those guys, especially in the Dak build. So, and then I'll maybe throw Christian Kirk in there too. His price is really, it's good. It's 5,300, I think, on DK and 6,100 on FanDuel. So I like that. They're pretty thin at wide receiver, and he certainly has some big play upside.
Yeah, I like the call on Kirk as well. Didn't do much last week, but the weeks before that, 9, 9, and 12 targets. And obviously with the amount of bodies that are down at wide receiver, Hopkins out, Rondale Moore's been banged up. They just don't have a whole lot of guys to go to. So I think Kirk bounces back this week. And then I mentioned all the tight ends. Every team playing on Sunday has a really interesting tight end target, whether it's Goddard for cheap or Kelsey or Gronk or even Higbee in the Monday game. Who played well the final week, gives us options that are different than Waller. So, Tuttle, who you liking at tight end?
I mean, up top, I think if you're spending, I do think Kelsey's the preferred option there. Gronk is, Eagles have been terrible against tight ends this season, so I could see the argument for Gronk as well. Like you said, it's all really good. Higbee's a good low price option. And then Ertz just continues to get ridiculous amounts of targets with DeAndre Hopkins out.
So all these teams have good tight ends. Maybe that's the key. Tight ends win championships.
Yeah, there you go. The guy I'm kind of squeezing out the most, and I don't know if that's right to do so, is George Kittle. There's just so much target competition there, and they don't throw the ball a ton. So hey, that's probably enough reason to play him because he's going to be low owned, and he's shown the upside. But he is the guy that's getting squeezed out the most by me.
You can afford to be a little picky just because there's so many quality options. Christy, your thoughts on tight end before we get out of here?
Yeah, it is. It's a great pool of tight ends to work with. I do like Zach Ertz quite a bit. He's playing pretty much every snap, getting a ton of targets, and he's not that expensive. Dallas Goedert, he's probably the best pass catcher in that Philly game there, so certainly like him. You mentioned Kelsey too. Kelsey, it'll be interesting to see where his ownership is, but if Tyreek is not 100%, Kelsey should be a great play there too. And then, it's hard not to love Gronkowski, especially, it's playoffs and he has the upside to get 2-3 touchdowns in that game. So I really like Gronk a lot. And, I think you could even get a little bit strange too and do 2 tight ends just because there are some really good plays there. And don't be afraid to mix it up a little bit.
I love doing that on the Sunday only slate, which of course we'll break that down for you tomorrow. But I like the 2 tight end builds on these slates too, for that reasons that you just mentioned. And we've got Gronk at like 1 or 2% ownership on FanDuel because he is the same, basically the same price as Kelsey over there. So Gronk in the playoffs, you can't ever go wrong with that. So with that, we're at lock, and we got through it all for you. So we'll go ahead and get out of here. I don't see any additional questions in the chat, so we'll call it a wrap. So thanks to Christy and Dan for joining me. I am Justin. Thanks to our producer Steve as well, working hard behind the scenes for us on the weekend. And enjoy the football, everybody. We'll be back here with more content on Rotogrinders for the Sunday slate, and we'll catch you then. So take care, everyone.